Dracula by Bram Stoker. Chapter 23. Dr. Seward's Diary. 3rd of October. The time seemed terribly long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Godalming and Quincey Morris. The Professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his beneficent purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow is overwhelmed in a misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was a frank, happy-looking man, with a strong, youthful face full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he is a drawn, haggard old man whose white hair matches well with his hollow, burning eyes, the grief-written lines on his face. His energy is still intact. In fact, he is like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for if all goes well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake up again to the realities of life. Poor fellow, I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his— The Professor knows this well enough, and doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was, under the circumstances, of absorbing interest. As well I can remember, here it is. I have studied over and over again, since they came into my hands, all the papers relating to this monster, and more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out, although there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of the knowledge of it. I have learned from the researches of my friend Arminius of Budapest that he was a life most wonderful a man, soldier, statesman, and alchemist, which latter was the highest development among the science knowledge of his time. He had a mighty brain, a learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear or remorse. He dared even to attend the Solomons, and there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him the brain powers survived the physical death, though it would seem that memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been, and is, only a child, but he is growing, and some things that were childish at first are now of man's nature. He is experimenting, and doing it well, and if it had not been that we have crossed the path, he may be yet, if we fail, the father or furtherer of a new order of things, which he road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, "And all this arrayed against my darling! But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us to defeat him." "He has all along, since his coming, been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well, for us it is as yet a child brain, for had he dared at the first to attempt certain things, he would have long ago been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed, and a man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and go slow. Festina lente may well be his motto." "I fail to understand," said Harker wearily. "Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain." The Professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. "Ah, my child, it will be plain. Do you not know how, of late, this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? How he has been making use of the zoophagous patient to effect his entry into friend John's home? For your vampire, though in all afterwards, he can come when he and how he will, must at first make entry only when asked thereto by an inmate. But these are not his most important experiments. Do we not see how at first all those so great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then, but that must be so. But all the time that so great child brain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the box. So he began to help, and then, when he found that this be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progress, and he scatter these graves of him, and none but he know where they are hidden. He may have intended to bury them deep in the ground, so that only use them in the night, or at such a time as he can change his form. They do him equal well, and none may know these are his hiding place. But, my child, do not despair. This knowledge come to him just too late. Already all his lairs, but one, be sterilized as for him, and before sunset this shall be so. Then he have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning so that we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than for him? Then why not be even more careful than him? By my clock it is 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must go sure, if slow, and lose no chance. See, there are 5 of us, when those absent ones return. Whilst he was speaking, we were startled by a knock at the hallway door, the double postman's knock on the telegraph boy. We all moved to the hall with one impulse, and Van Helsing, holding up his hand to us to keep silence, stepped to the door and opened it. The boy handed in a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and after looking at the direction, opened it and read it aloud. Look out for D. He has just now, 12:45, come from Carfax hurriedly, and hastens toward the south. He seems to be going round and may want to see you. Mina. There was a pause, broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet. Van Helsing turned to him quickly, and said, God will act in his own way and time. Do not fear and do not rejoice as yet, for we wish for the moment may be our undoings. I care for nothing now, he answered hotly, except the wipe out of this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it. Oh, hush, hush, my child, said Van Helsing. Good does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. Like God is merciful and just. He knows your pain and your devotion to that dear Madam Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled, did she but hear your wild words? Do not fear any of us. We are devoted to this cause, and today shall be seeing the end. The time is coming for action. Today this vampire is limit to his powers of man. Until sunset he may not change. It is well to take him and arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1, and there are yet some times before he can hither come. Be he never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. About half an hour after we arrived, Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock at the ball door. It was just an ordinary knock, such as given hourly by thousands of gentlemen, but it made the professor's heart and mind beat loudly. We looked at each other, and together moved into the hall. We each held ready our various armaments, the spiritual in the left hand, the moral in the right. Van Helsing pulled back the latch, and holding the door half open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shone upon our faces when on the step, close to the door, we saw Lord Golding and Quincy Morris. They came quickly in and closed the door behind them, the former saying, as they moved along the hall, "It's all right. We found both places, 6 boxes in each. We destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" asked the professor. "For him." We were silent for a minute, and then Quincy said, "There's nothing to do but wait here. If, however, he doesn't show up, by 5 o'clock we must turn off, for it won't do to leave Miss Harker alone after sunset." "He will be here before long now," said Professor Van Helsing, who had been consulting his pocketbook. "Nota bene, in Madame's telegram, he went south from Carfax. That means he went across the river, and he could only do so at the slack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He has as yet only suspicions, and went from Carfax first to the place where he would be suspect interference least. You must have been at Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not already there shows that he went to Mile End next. This took him some time, for he would have then had to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait now. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that we may throw away no chance. Hush, there is no time now. Have all your arms, be ready." He held up a warning hand, and as he spoke, for we could all hear a soft key inserted in the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures on different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance round the room, he at once laid out a plan of attack, and without speaking a word, with a gesture he placed each of us in position. Van Helsing, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it was opened the Professor could guard it, whilst we two stepped between the incomer and the door. Godalming, behind Quincy, and in front, stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in suspense that made the seconds pass with a nightmare slowness. The slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least he feared it.